This real side experience would begin in what was my previous place of employment, a supermarket in the UK. On the physical, so would I have already relinquished my position with the supermarket due to my relocating to Mexico. And so, this real side experience took place several nights after my arrival into Mexico, and there I would find myself in the very supermarket that up until recently I worked in. However, it seemed I was leaving the building with the intentions that I would not be returning, as though a real side recurrence of what actually took place a week or so ago on the physical level. In this case, however, I would be met with a fierce resistance. I was beset upon by my former work colleagues, my managers, etc. Their objective was to prevent my departure seemingly. As individuals build their consciousness, the ideas it comprises of will present as though a bubble of a comfort affording familiarity through the generally repetitive actions and patterns of behavior that most will fall into and re-establish lifetime after lifetime. The personal self adores the comfort zone of its creation, and as such, absent of the push from the real awareness to break the routines and ingrained habits, the personal self would be content to continue in the same mode of familiarity of thought, consideration, attitude and action indefinitely, unless some physical level occurrence were to suddenly impact and disrupt this, such as the very real potentialities of war, alien invasions, possibilities I and others have shared over the years, that if agreement pertaining to them is maintained, and if as the most prominent within the agreements, human consciousness comprises of such overall human experiential scenarios will come to pass, and incorporated within the ideas of a consciousness the personal self seeks to maintain will be the ideas of others, not the real awareness that animates through the body forms, but the created parts, the body types themselves, the created personalities, identities, etc. And as we cling to the ideas of others, we rather are deciding to experience the effects, the presence of other body types in our experiences, and like any idea, the body types can only be experienced in a simulated creation. To release attachment to all ideas, so we then are this real awareness, that which we all actually is, that animates through all consciousness and affected body types, absent of the simulation of creation that presents as a differentiation of form and location, the separation as experienced through the mechanics that afford the illusion of the various life-level dimensional positions, absent of all creational mechanics and body forms. All real awareness is present as this same overall isness everything reality, and so in reality there can be no motion, distance, no separation, everything is here and now, and with this recognition and positioning, no one ever leaves the presence of any other. There is no separation, as seems to be so when an individual transitions on demise of the physical body, for example. Only from the personal perspective are others entering and departing from our experiences, and then the individual may create the additional emotions of sorrow or mourning as they immerse themselves in the illusory consideration that other beings have removed themselves from their experience. This clinging onto the ideas that are the body types of others will ensure the individuals remain locked karmically with each other, and remain creationally bound as a result, as we must be able to release all ideas if we wish to stand as the true light beings we actually are. As I said earlier, the personal self seeks consistency and regularity of experience, including the individuals they associate with in creation. A little bubble of consciousness ideas each personal immersed individual seeks to perpetuate, and so very reluctant are they to relinquish any ideas they hold to, including then those they have formed association with. They do not wish any idea to escape their little bubble worlds of illusion, and this can be most exemplified where children desire to leave home, or a friend chooses to move beyond a circle of friends he or she had maintained association with for who knows how many lifetimes. As Duane has often said, if the intent of individuals no longer aligns with his own, that of continued ears recognition, he lets them go. For should we wish to remain with those whose intents are not real in regards to the true reality, to be in the continued experiences of such others, we must share then the same ideas and intents that they hold too, and then would be the case of limiting ourselves in creation with those who are choosing a creational limitation as their experience. When I shared this experience with Duane, he would reiterate how this creational realm is very much fear-based, a fear that permeates through all consciousness, and certainly for the personal self would fear be very much a standard reaction where their little bubble consciousnesses of ideas are threatened, in that certain ideas may be denied them, including the body forms of others they have had continued association with in this lifetime and many previously. And so, this was very much the emphasis here in this real side experience, as I had to struggle through the work colleagues and managers of my previous place of employment, as they attempted to retain me in their experience. That even if individuals may detest each other, if they have featured in each other's experiences for a certain duration, despite the malice that exists between them, this still is a situation, an interaction of familiarity, that each would seek to maintain, hence why couples may hate each other, but seemingly never choose to separate, as familiarity is more favourable to the personal self, than a step into the unknown beyond the comfort of the established consciousness. Entering into the scene now would additionally be a selection of former school colleagues, many of which I had not seen on the physical in decades, but very possibly emotional attachment with them had been retained. But as Duane has told me, to make a complete change in physical level circumstances that a relocation to Mexico would provide, so would it be a tremendous dissolving of previous routines and habits, an overhaul of the consciousness up until this point, like a thorough house cleaning, and where, very likely, much by way of attachments still maintained up until that point would be thrown out with the idea trash also. And so here it was as though these particular school colleagues from years past were among those ideas being severed, and were also presenting their protestations along with my work colleagues and managers at my exiting the supermarket. As buildings can represent the consciousness on the real side, so can collective consciousnesses be thus represented. A collective consciousness being groups of individuals karmically bound by certain shared ideas, and the ideas that bind them can simply be those of attachment to the body forms of the collective group. This here was my additional impression, that the supermarket now, far vaster than it had been as its physical version, was larger as to represent a collective consciousness of karmically bound beings, incorporating myself, my former school friends, and work colleagues. A bind I was removing myself from demonstrably here, as I was vacating the collective consciousness representing a building, with all the others the collective comprised of, fearful of the loss of one from their number, the loss of an idea that would impact their sense of perpetual continuity of routine and familiarity they wanted to maintain. As I proceeded to exit the building, very vast as I said, still other body types would join in with an attempted prevention. Individuals that my personal self did not recognize, but only that they perhaps had not featured in my current lifetime, but rest assured very likely would do so in future lifetimes. Future lifetimes I would resign myself to, if I maintained agreement and attachment with the ideas of all these various assorted beings that made up such a collective I was seeking to now extricate myself from. There were even a few highly trained martial art characters, but the advantage of standing as the real awareness that we are is that we are not resigned to that which we have developed personal self-wise each lifetime around. The real awareness can afford its simulated experience operating body forms, everything required according to any eventuality, as long as the personal self holds to no agreements that in some way limit the real awareness's effectiveness. As such, despite the tremendous odds not in my favour, the sheer volume of individuals attempting to prevent my departure, so I would proceed, and defend myself where required, the real awareness affording the skills needed to nullify even the skilled martial arts characters. I was also joined by another group of individuals, but unlike those of this collective, the creationally bound and personal self-immersed former school and work colleagues, those that were clinging to ideas, including the idea of my body form and consciousness, these beings were more so standing as the real awareness they and everyone actually is. And although my personal self didn't recognize them, I suggest they very likely were the various new friends standing with me and accompanying me on my exodus, as though affording me support for what was a part of the process of awareness idea releasing. We finally made it to the exit, but before I would leave the building, the collective consciousness I was a part of, one of those in the awareness-orientated group with me now, would produce a curious technological gadget. It had the appearance of a very advanced cell phone. He would activate something, a panel would slide open, revealing a small golden flattened bar. This he would present to me and inform me it would be required for my journey. When we have references to currency in real side experiences, this tends to indicate the idea of earning one's way, that as we share and promote the ears and the new sound, we in turn become more aware as everything equals itself. The more I train to become a swimmer, the more time I devote to it, the greater a swimmer I become, as an example. And to be absolute with the true reality, we must be that which it is absolutely, that which isn't anything creational, idea attachment-wise. In a sense, we pay for our awareness through that which we do, our intent and actions that reflect back and facilitate our own awareness processes. And in real side experiences, this can be represented through the exchange of a coin, currency, or perhaps in this case, even gold. Gold is, after all, a colour associated with the true reality as a real side experiential reference, and perhaps then suggesting of the endless recognitional journey, the endless earning of one's way to equal that recognition, represented here as I was presented with the gold bar that would be required for such further on my journey, symbolically speaking. The group and I proceeded with what seemed to be a bus tour of a city unfamiliar to my personal self. The driver of the bus, as impressions suggested, was a real guide. As vehicles, including buses, can represent ideas, the passengers within them are then sharing the same idea agreement. The driver then would represent the individual who had conceived the idea, and so, with a real guide or Duane at the wheel, we can be assured the idea we are agreeing with as a passenger will be life and awareness beneficial. We would stop at a vast tree. It seemed to reach for miles into the sky. The guide would speak of it and reveal that it possessed of a name. but I fail to recollect these details on waking. And then the bus journey terminated in an open countryside setting, and as we disembarked, it seemed we had a final obstacle to overcome, as emerging from two caves would be a gargantuan, slobbering, beast-wolf-like creatures, advancing on us with a menace, intent on our destruction. Maybe actual beings or body forms deciding such, but maybe representing aspects of the consciousness I was choosing to release at that moment. For just as overall consciousness can be represented by a huge monster on the real side, so it follows that individual consciousnesses, or even parts of them, can be in this way presented, although on a smaller scale. The beasts would attack. I would nullify them by assuming an alternate body form myself, that I was larger, more fearsome, more hairy and formidable. One of the beast wolves would as though capitulate and back down, the other I would pin on its side. What followed may sound a little gruesome, as I proceeded to as though dismantle the pinned beast, part by part, organ by organ. But this was not a literal mutilation, as throughout my doing this was the creature very much unharmed, although desiring that I cease with my dismantling of its body form. My impressions were that this represented an assistance for this creature, for just as all body types are the effect of the design of a consciousness, so a monstrous body form is a reflection of a monstrous consciousness. And so, as I was dismantling the monstrosity, it was as though I was assisting in the releasing of the ideas that effected it in such a monstrous form, that ultimately we each must decide the ideas we hold to or release that dictate creational positioning and body type, but we can agree for the assistance of others in this regard. The guides often will remove tap lines from us as an example, assuming we are prepared to let them go. And even though the beast was protesting, perhaps this was more a case of the real awareness that animates it desiring such assistance, and the protesting personal self had been somewhat left out of the loop, as it were, but ultimately it would serve as beneficial for it also, like a child who is denied a bag of diabetes-inducing sweets. Protest he might, but it is for his benefit. For indeed, as I said, the beast was in no pain, even as it presented as a literal dismantling of its form. And if indeed these beasts were in fact representing parts of my consciousness, as opposed to individual beings who were receiving my tap-lining releasing assistance, the same representation applies, that of dismantling the beasts that the consciousness comprises of and can be real side presented as. Not so much that we delete or erase the consciousness, but more so we are disengaging our attachment to it, as what we have created consciousness-wise we rather are stuck with, but it only is as bothersome as we allow it to be. We learn more so to stand in indifference to it, And finally, as we release the consciousness in its entirety, the monster that it is can have no bearing on us, as we just let it go.